it's affect all the students. They need a better future. They need a good job. And how can they get a good job, good education? In China, I think a student who graduated from a better university will have a better chance to get a good job.
My wife and I, about 5 years ago, I guess it's 6 now, moved to Africa for 3 years and taught in Ethiopia in a private school. Now, our son taught for the Peace Corps in Ghana, and I can tell you for a fact that if you went into a public school where he taught, you could walk into a public high school room where you're teaching physics, and there will be maybe 8 tables, and there are no chairs, there's a blackboard, and there's no equipment. Any glassware there would be, say, jars that my son would have found or gathered. So there's a huge difference between what you find in the private education sector and what you find in the public. Public education in Africa has no resource. It has no funding. Whatever they have is what they either beg, borrow, or steal.
From 2001 until late 2003, December of 2003, I taught secondary school in the country of Malawi, southeastern Africa. I taught in a community day secondary school, which was in a village, and for many of my classes, I had perhaps about 5 or 6 textbooks for up to maybe 120 students. At the beginning of each term, from the headmaster, I received a box of chalk, 2 small exercise books that were government issued, small little notebooks, and a blue pen and a red pen. Those were my teaching materials.
I taught in the early 80s in Caracas, Venezuela, but I was teaching in a school for Americans in a foreign country. The most marked difference was the public school did not tolerate any differences. If you couldn't memorize their curriculum and follow their rules, you were just dismissed without really any questions at all. They had authority over the parents, and the government allowed that. So there were no special needs students in any public schools in Venezuela.
I think we need special education. In China, we don't have special education. And to pay more attention to each individual student. I think in the US, the philosophy of education is no child left behind. But in China, I think, in my opinion, I think it's something like an elite education. That means people just pay more attention to the so-called good students. That means a student who always have high scores. So a lot of students are neglected.
In China, students are not encouraged to talk or ask questions a lot in the classroom. And they were supposed to memorize what they have learned, etc. But here, students are encouraged to express their ideas and to ask questions. I think it is better here to encourage students ask questions, because it stimulates their thinking, the way of thinking, encourages them to think and to ask questions on their own. And in China, the teachers and the students have realized their problem, and now they're learning from the United States.
Although it is and still claims to be a democratic country, what they taught was not the type of education we have here, which kind of fosters free thinking. Instead, it really was memorization, rote, here are the facts, learn them, take a test.
In Korea, I thought school is just for study, but here I can think more fun, and I can joking with teachers.
American students are very creative, just because they are not pushed too hard.
In Germany, it's like you're done with school around 1 o'clock and then you're going home. There are no school activities, like sports, there's nothing. So I think that's really cool here.
I was very impressed overall by the quality and the drive of my students that I had in Malawi. I taught at a boarding school, which is kind of an unusual situation, where students lived in hostels. We had a boys' and a girls' hostel. And a number of my students who lived in villages that were a further distance away but couldn't afford to live in the boarding situation would rent huts kind of nearby the school, and they would organize maybe other boys or other girls to live with them. And I just saw this wonderful thing. These students would do chores, they would work at home, and they would go to school, and they would come at night because the school had electricity and the surrounding area didn't, and they would study for hours at night. Not because their teacher told them to, because they wanted to learn and they wanted to do well in their tests and they wanted a chance at a better life.
If we can take these young people and give them amazing opportunities and say, we're going to help show you how to learn about reconciliation. We're going to teach you about what it is to be a teacher, a lawyer, an engineer, and we're going to instill in you the knowledge of how to then build your country and have a future. And it's not just that we want them to be these things, we don't want them to be other things.
Lately in Venezuela, the particular political situation is such that they are squashing a bit of the right to learn and the right to be heard. Politically, a socialist semi-dictator is changing the whole aura of the country, and I do think that education is going to be one of the places where he will say that he's trying to involve and get all the population the ability to become educated, but in fact, he will probably squash it.
Is it better to educate everyone to a certain level, or to pick your best and brightest and educate them to this level and let them be your leaders? You know what I mean? I think you get into an area like Ethiopia, you have to make that decision. They're going to have to decide, do we want our best and brightest to be educated? If so, how will we identify them? Number one. Secondly, what kind of support will we provide for them to get them that kind of high quality education? Okay, now at least we have our technical and, let's say, our medical leaders, our economic leaders. We have the people we need educated at the degree they need to come back and give our country good knowledge-based decisions. You know, you look at AIDS, you look at diseases, and you look at all the ravages that these countries suffer, and a lot of it's due to just lack of general education. So you really have two problems. Number one, if you only choose to educate these few and you never educate the masses, you're still going to be at the whims of all of these winds that blow in terms of different diseases and economic hardships that, you know, affect you, especially when you're uneducated. So that's what I see they're going to have to do. They're going to have to make decisions in terms of just at what levels of education do we need to provide and at what numbers.
Today I have come to notice that we, as the people of the world, have much in common than we even know. And we can only be able to learn that if we spread education to everyone in any corner of the world.
Babu